Welcome to our discussion. Let's jump right into the core narrative, a case that spans from 2015 to 2025, exposing a multi-layered abuse of legal and regulatory power.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're talking about a story that starts with a personal conflict involving Danish Thanvi, right?
Right. It kicks off in 2015 when Mewish Mumtaz is hired by background check group, where Danish is the CEO. Things heat up in 2016 after a domestic violence incident, and soon family figures like Kol Sakib and Major Mumtaz begin targeting Danish and his business.
Mm-hmm. And that personal vendetta quickly escalates. I mean, a false FIR is lodged as early as January 2017. Then there's the whole legal battle, bail, acquittal, and even a cybercrime complaint that gets ignored.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is how the forensic reports came into play. The trial court's argument rested on flawed forensic evidence, misread and sometimes completely unrecorded.
Yeah, I caught that. The recovery memo lacked any proper witness testimony, right?
Right. They had a single witness who wasn't even produced, and other supposed witnesses didn't confirm anything. The chain of custody was a complete mess, with no entry in the required registers and no clear records of recovered devices.
So, essentially, the forensic reports and the alleged link via an IP address were shaky at best. There was even talk of an IP address 196.194.3138, supposedly tied to Danish through his wife's subscription, but no real device was ever produced.
Exactly. And that's where the doctrine of falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus kicks in. If one piece of evidence is planted or false, the entire case gets tainted.
And that's a huge red flag.
Now, moving forward, after the initial legal roller coaster, the case takes an even more complex turn into the economic arena. Once Danish got convicted in May 2024 and later granted bail in June 2024, the conflict shifted gears.
Right. And that's when the NADRA BCG SECP angle comes in, isn't it? The story shows that Danish's business, Backcheck Group, which had a long-standing authorized relationship with NADRA dating back to 2007, suddenly became the target of economic sabotage.
Yeah, it's like you have this history of smooth, even authorized operations with Nadra's Verisis that built the backbone of their CNIC verification services. Then, in October 2024, without any notice or proper explanation, Nadra abruptly terminates that access.
And this termination wasn't just a random administrative error, right? It appears to be a deliberate act, driven by the same group behind the earlier cybercrime and false FIR allegations.
Exactly. Credible sources confirmed that the actors behind the fabricated criminal case later turned their attention to Danish's business, aiming to force a closure as a punishment for his earlier principled stand in supporting Mewish in 2016.
It's a shift from personal attacks to economic warfare.
Yes, and as if that wasn't enough, while Nadra was terminating Verisis access, which is crucial for BCG's operations, there was also a parallel move by the Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan, or SECP. They initiated a baseless regulatory action by issuing a false show cause notice.
I find that part particularly egregious. The idea that state institutions could be exploited to target a business with such sweeping consequences is deeply concerning, don't you think?
Absolutely. And the timeline is key here. From February 2025, BCG submitted formal requests to NADRA and even followed up with SECP. By late February 2025, the board of directors had passed a resolution to take legal action.
Right? That demonstrates the shift from a personal vendetta to formal corporate legal resistance.
Then, in March 2025, a constitutional writ petition filed at the Islamabad High Court challenged these arbitrary terminations under Articles 4, 10A, 18, and 25. And by April 2025, the SECP had issued its show cause notice, which the court later found legally baseless.
I remember the crucial moment on 21st May 2025 when the High Court granted interim relief by suspending the SECP's action. That's a huge win, right?
Absolutely. It was a pivotal legal victory, showing that the court recognized the abuse of power. both the illegal raid in the cybercrime case and the later economic sabotage.
Yeah, and then comes the affidavit filing, correct?
Yes, on 4th of June 2025, an affidavit of irreparable loss was filed, documenting severe operational harm, reputational damage, and loss of key clients following these arbitrary actions by NADRA and SECP. This affidavit, along with the interim High Court order, further solidified the resilience of Danish's fight back.
So, in a nutshell, we see a transition from flawed forensic evidence in the cybercrime case all the way to a full-blown economic sabotage campaign. Its emerged narrative from 2015 suggesting not just an isolated legal error, but a systematic abuse of state power.
Yes, indeed. And the narrative also emphasizes that Danish's case is more than a personal ordeal. It's about how powerful networks can weaponize cybercrime laws and regulatory agencies to suppress independent entrepreneurs.
Yeah, it's both a legal and a public interest issue.
Now, let me add an interesting nuance here. After Danish's release on bail in June 2024, credible sources revealed that the same individuals behind the cybercrime persecution orchestrated the abrupt and unlawful termination of Backcheck Group's access to NADRA's Verisys system. It was almost like they were trying to deliver a second blow, transitioning from hurting an individual to crippling a business.
And that, as you mentioned, was driven by personal vendetta, stemming from Danish's principled support of Mewish during her crisis back in 2016. It's like they couldn't stand the idea of not having full control.
Exactly. And to enforce this narrative of abuse, the High Court's intervention, especially the interim relief against the SECP's action, reinforces that these measures were indeed procedurally and legally flawed.
Yeah, and it sent a pretty strong message to other potential targets.
Now, I want to highlight a point here that might be slightly controversial. Some argue that the entire case hinges on technicalities and procedural mishaps. However, when you consider the integrated timeline, it's clear that this isn't just a legal technicality, it's a targeted, systematic effort to silence dissent and punish principled stands.
I agree. It's not just a matter of evidence being mishandled. It's about using every available channel to wreck someone's professional and personal life.
Exactly, and that's why the entire narrative has become a powerful case study. It touches on forensic irregularities, judicial oversights, regulatory overreach, and the exploitation of state mechanisms for personal vendettas.
So, in terms of impact, would you say that the case highlights a broader systemic risk of abuse among state institutions?
Absolutely. This case is a prime example of how powerful interests might misuse legal frameworks and state apparatus to not only convict an individual on flimsy grounds, but to later attack their business and professional standing. It's a cautionary tale for all citizens, especially entrepreneurs, about the perils of such misuse of power.
Yeah, and it definitely raises questions about how cybercrime laws can be weaponized.
And let's not forget the role of the doctrine falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus. It essentially invalidates the prosecution's entire case once it's found that one part is based on planted or false evidence.
Right, that's a classic legal principle making a comeback.
Moving on to the economic retaliation side, the narrative of the NADRA BCG SECP dispute is equally compelling. Essentially, after steady operations from 2007 through 2023, the relationship between BCG and NADRA was suddenly disrupted, evidencing not a business decision, but a targeted strike.
Yeah, especially considering BCG's long track record of authorized use and a formal service agreement.
Exactly. The abrupt termination in October 2024, followed by the regulatory maneuvers by SECP, clearly shows that the actions were premeditated. These retaliatory measures were meant to force the company closure and inflict economic humiliation on Danish.
It's striking how personal vendetta can spill over into economic sabotage.
And then we see legal resistance from the company. With a board resolution passed in February 2025, a constitutional petition in March 2025, and then the High Court granting interim relief in May 2025, all pointing towards a robust counteraction against these retaliatory moves.
The resolution to file a petition isn't just a legal maneuver. It's a clear statement that these abuses will not go unchecked. Plus, The affidavit in early June 2025, documenting the business losses, serves as, well, hard evidence of the repercussions of this targeted attack.
Yes, it reinforces the idea that the entire chain, from the flawed forensic reports to the economic sabotage, comprises a deliberate abuse of power aimed at dismantling both a person's reputation and a business's stability.
I mean, it's like watching a domino effect of injustice, isn't it?
Absolutely. And this discussion is not just about one failed prosecution or one isolated administrative error. It's about a pattern of systemic abuse that, if left unchecked, could set a dangerous precedent for the misuse of cybercrime laws and state power.
It's a wake-up call for judicial and regulatory reforms.
Before we wrap up, I want to mention the impact on wider audiences, legal professionals, human rights advocates, and academics. The court's reversal of the cybercrime conviction, coupled with the subsequent successful legal resistance against economic sabotage, creates a powerful narrative for international research and public interest advocacy.
Yeah. This case is going to be cited in discussions about the misuse of regulatory frameworks and the protection of civil liberties.
Totally. And it also reminds us that vigilance is key. When powerful networks exploit every available tool, from forged forensic reports to abusive regulatory actions, the consequences can extend far beyond just one individual's case.
Yeah? And exposing that is critical for preventing future injustice.
So, to sum up, we have an integrated timeline that spans personal conflict, flawed forensic practices, and a targeted economic sabotage campaign. And through robust legal action, Danish Thanvi has not only secured his acquittal on criminal charges, but has also launched a resilient defense against state-sponsored economic retaliation.
Exactly. And that comprehensive narrative is a stark reminder of the risks we face when state power is misused.
Indeed. This case stands as a powerful example of how critical it is to uphold the rule of law and to expose systematic abuses for the greater good of society.
Absolutely. Protecting the rights of every citizen and entrepreneur is paramount.
Thanks for this engaging discussion. It truly highlights both the legal intricacies and the broader implications of such abuse of power.
Yeah, it does. Thanks for breaking it down so clearly.
And for our listeners, keep an eye on these developments. They remind us that justice isn't always a straight line. It's about fighting back against every misuse of power.
Right on. Stay informed and question everything.
That's all for our conversation today. Until next time, keep challenging injustice and sharing the truth.
Absolutely. See you next time.